I came back after 3 months of no contact, told you I missed you, that I'd figured things out, that I was ready to try again. We had 2 perfect weeks that felt like coming home. Then I panicked and disappeared again, leaving you more confused than when I'd originally left. The return wasn't about wanting you back. It was about testing whether I could survive without the safety of knowing you were still there if I needed you. I'm going to show you the 5 psychological reasons why women return just to leave again, and how to protect yourself while understanding the complex emotions driving this painful pattern. The security test. I came back to test whether you were still my emotional safety net, not because I was ready to be in a relationship again. After 3 months apart, I'd convinced myself I was fine without you, that I'd moved on and grown beyond needing the connection we'd shared. But late at night, when anxiety crept in or when life felt overwhelming, I found myself wanting to reach out to the one person who had always made me feel safe. The return wasn't about missing the relationship. It was about missing the security of knowing someone cared about me unconditionally. Someone I could turn to when my own strength wasn't enough to handle whatever life was throwing at me. Day 3 of being back, I realized I wasn't thinking about rebuilding our relationship as much as I was relieved to know I could still access your comfort when I needed it. The familiar ease of our connection felt like putting on a favorite sweater I'd been afraid I'd lost forever. Day 8, I started feeling suffocated by the relationship expectations that came with being back in contact. You wanted to talk about what went wrong, what we'd learned, how we could do better this time. I just wanted the comfort without the commitment, the safety without the responsibility. What my therapist helped me understand? I was using our connection as emotional regulation rather than seeking genuine partnership. Coming back was about managing my own anxiety, not about building something sustainable with you. The cruel reality this creates? Giving you hope for reconciliation while internally treating you as a security blanket rather than a partner? Using the love you'd rebuilt as a way to soothe my own fears about being alone, without considering the cost to your emotional well-being. Understanding her return? When someone comes back after leaving, they might be testing whether the safety they associated with you still exists, not whether they're ready to invest in the relationship that safety originally came from. What reinforces the security testing pattern? Immediately providing the comfort and reassurance she's seeking without any conversation about what changed or what she's actually offering in return. This confirms that you're available for emotional support without relationship responsibility. What challenges the pattern? Caring reception combined with honest questions about her intentions. I'm glad you reached out, because I care about you. I'm also curious about what's different now that made you want to reconnect. My chest tightened every time you asked about our future, because I realized I'd come back for the feeling of being loved, without having thought about whether I was ready to love you back with the consistency you deserved. But the security testing was just the surface layer of a deeper pattern. The unfinished business. I returned because something felt incomplete about how we'd ended, not because I wanted to begin again. Our original breakup had been messy, emotional, full of things left unsaid and feelings left unprocessed. 3 months later, I was haunted not by missing you, but by the sense that our story had ended mid-sentence without proper closure. The return was driven by a need to complete the emotional arc of our relationship, to have the conversations we'd been too hurt to have when we were breaking up, to understand what had gone wrong, to make sense of why something that had felt so right had become so difficult. Week 1 back together, I found myself more interested in analyzing our past relationship than in building a new version of it. I wanted to understand the psychology of what had happened between us, to process the emotions I'd been avoiding, to finally feel at peace with what we'd been to each other. Week 2, I realized I was treating you like a therapist for our relationship, rather than a partner in rebuilding it. I needed to understand why I'd pushed you away, why the love you'd offered had felt overwhelming, why I'd chosen to leave rather than stay and work through our issues. The complexity this creates. Genuine need for emotional processing mixed with false hope for relationship restoration. I needed closure, but my return gave you the impression that I wanted a new beginning rather than a proper ending. Understanding the unfinished business pattern. When someone returns after leaving, they might be seeking resolution and understanding rather than reconciliation, even if their approach suggests they want to try again. What feeds the unfinished business dynamic? Focusing on rebuilding the future without processing what happened in the past. This leaves both people confused about whether you're starting over or finishing what you started. One addresses unfinished business honestly, creating space for processing the past while being clear about present intentions. I've been thinking a lot about what happened between us, and I realize there are things I never properly processed or communicated. I don't know where that leads us, but I'd like to have those conversations if you're open to it. My throat felt tight whenever you talked about our future plans because I was still trying to understand our past, still trying to make sense of why I'd run from something I'd claimed to want. The unfinished business was driving my return, but underneath that was something more complicated: the commitment rehearsal. I came back to practice being in a relationship without the pressure of it being permanent. After months alone, I'd started wondering if I was capable of sustained intimacy, if I could handle the daily reality of loving someone without running when things got complicated or intense. Returning to you felt like a safe way to test my relationship readiness without the risk of starting fresh with someone new. You represented familiar territory, someone who already knew my patterns, someone I didn't have to perform for, someone who had already seen me at my worst and loved me anyway. Coming back felt like relationship training wheels, a way to practice being a partner without the vulnerability of building something new from scratch. Week 3, I caught myself treating our reunion like an experiment rather than a commitment. Could I handle weekend plans without feeling trapped? Could I navigate disagreements without shutting down? Could I receive your affection without immediately wanting to create distance? Week 4, I realized I was using our history as a buffer against the intensity of present connection, because we'd loved each other before. I felt like I could test my capacity for love without risking my heart the way I would with someone new who didn't already know and accept my complications. If you're watching this because someone came back only to leave again, subscribe now. What I reveal next shows how returning can be more about personal testing than genuine relationship investment. The commitment rehearsal creates false intimacy, the appearance of working on a relationship while actually using it as a practice ground for relationship skills I'd need with someone else or with you in a different phase of my emotional development. Understanding her rehearsal mindset. When someone returns after leaving, they might be using the familiar safety of your connection to test their own capacity for relationship, rather than committing to building one with you specifically. What enables the rehearsal pattern? Accepting the return without any conversation about what's changed, what she's learned, or what she's actually prepared to offer this time. This allows her to use your connection for personal growth without taking responsibility for your emotional investment. What challenges the rehearsal dynamic? Honest conversation about intentions and readiness. I'm happy you want to reconnect. And I also want to understand what's different this time. What have you learned about yourself that makes you think you're ready for what didn't work before? My stomach would drop whenever you made plans more than a week out because I didn't know if I was practicing relationship with you or genuinely building one. And the uncertainty made every forward step feel dishonest. The commitment rehearsal was revealing something even deeper about my relationship with love itself. The fear-based return. I came back because being alone had triggered fears I wasn't ready to face, not because I'd grown ready for partnership. 3 months of single life had forced me to confront parts of myself I'd been avoiding. My anxiety about the future, my insecurity about my worth, my fear that I might not be capable of the kind of deep love that sustains long-term relationships. Coming back to you was a way of avoiding those uncomfortable truths about myself. The return was less about wanting you and more about escaping the discomfort of sitting with my own emotional reality without the distraction of managing a relationship. Your love had always been a buffer against my own self-doubt, and without it, I'd had to face aspects of my personality and history I wasn't ready to heal. Month 4, I recognized that I'd returned during a particularly difficult period in my life. Job stress, family issues, friendship conflicts that made me feel isolated and overwhelmed. You represented stability and comfort during a time when everything else felt uncertain. Month 5, I realized I was using our relationship as emotional regulation again, seeking your presence when life felt chaotic, but wanting space when things stabilized. I was treating you like a security blanket rather than a partner, available for comfort but not interested in the reciprocity that real relationships require. The pattern this creates: returning during difficult periods and leaving during stable ones, using the relationship as crisis management rather than genuine partnership. Your love becomes a resource I access when I'm struggling, rather than something I nurture when I'm strong. Understanding fear-based returns. When someone comes back after leaving, they might be seeking comfort from their own emotional reality, rather than seeking genuine connection with you. The timing of their return often correlates with stress or instability in other areas of their life. What reinforces fear-based patterns? Immediately providing comfort and stability without addressing why they left or what's changed. This confirms that you're available for emotional rescue without requiring genuine relationship investment. What addresses fear-based returns? Compassionate boundaries that acknowledge their difficulty while maintaining your own emotional protection. I can see that you're going through a hard time, and I care about that. I also need to understand what you're looking for from reconnecting before I can decide how available I can be. My heart would race every time you asked about my life outside our relationship because I knew I'd come back to escape problems I hadn't solved, rather than because I'd solved them and was ready to build something healthy with you. But the fear-based return was masking the most painful truth of all: the love-fear paradox. I kept returning because I genuinely loved you, and kept leaving because that love terrified me more than loneliness ever could. The cruelest truth about my pattern of coming back just to leave again was that it wasn't driven by lack of love. It was driven by love so intense that it felt dangerous to my sense of self-preservation and autonomy. Every time I returned, I was reminded of how deeply I could feel for you, how easily you could become the center of my emotional world, how much power you had to hurt me simply by existing in my life as someone I couldn't control or guarantee would stay forever. The leaving wasn't rejection of you. It was panic about my own capacity to love someone so much that losing them would devastate me. I kept testing whether I could survive without you, and every return proved that I couldn't, which made the leaving feel even more necessary for my emotional survival. Month 6, I finally understood through therapy that I was stuck at a cycle where loving you felt like giving up my independence, but leaving you felt like giving up my happiness. Neither choice felt sustainable, So I kept oscillating between them. The impossible equation: love you completely and risk losing myself, or protect myself completely and definitely lose you. The returning and leaving was my attempt to find a middle ground that didn't actually exist. What my therapist helped me see, I was treating love like a zero-sum game, where caring deeply about someone meant giving up caring about myself. The fear wasn't really about you leaving me. It was about me disappearing into love so completely that I wouldn't know how to exist independently if the relationship ended. Understanding the love-fear paradox. When someone keeps returning and leaving, they might be struggling with their own capacity for deep love, rather than ambivalence about you specifically. The intensity of their feelings creates panic rather than joy. What makes the paradox worse? Trying to convince them that love is safe or that you'll never hurt them. This misunderstands that their fear isn't about your intentions, but about their own vulnerability to loving someone so much that it threatens their sense of self. What helps navigate the paradox? Recognizing that their struggle is with love itself, not with you personally. I understand that loving someone deeply can feel scary. I can't promise you that love is safe, but I can promise you that your fear of love doesn't make you broken or unlovable. My whole body would shake every time I realized how much I cared about you, because caring that much felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, beautiful and terrifying and impossible to sustain without eventually falling. The love-fear paradox was the engine driving all my other patterns. These 5 psychological drivers reveal why some people can't stay but can't fully leave. Every time I came back just to leave again, I was trying to find a way to love you that didn't require me to risk losing myself in that love. The pattern wasn't about not knowing what I wanted. It was about wanting 2 incompatible things: the safety of deep connection and the security of emotional independence. Understanding why someone keeps returning and leaving helps you protect yourself, while recognizing that their pattern is about their own relationship with vulnerability, rather than their feelings about you specifically. Here's what I wish I could have told you during all those cycles of coming and going. I love you enough that it scares me into leaving, and I miss you enough that it pulls me back. But until I learn to be okay with being scared, I'm gonna keep hurting both of us with this pattern. The returning and leaving isn't about not caring enough. It's about caring so much that it triggers every self-protection mechanism someone has developed to avoid the risk of devastating loss. Do I regret putting you through the cycle of hope and disappointment? Every single time I did it, because you deserved someone who could stay present with their own capacity for love, rather than running from it repeatedly. Do I understand why I kept returning despite knowing I wasn't ready to stay? Finally, an understanding it helped me work on building the emotional stability that sustainable love requires. Would I encourage someone to accept repeated returns from someone who keeps leaving? No, because real healing requires consequences, and enabling someone's pattern doesn't help them grow beyond it. If someone keeps coming back just to leave again, maybe they're not confused about their feelings for you. Maybe they're overwhelmed by the intensity of those feelings and don't yet have the emotional tools to stay present with deep love without losing themselves in it. Maybe the kindest thing you can do is recognize that their pattern is about their relationship with love itself, not their assessment of your worth as a partner. And maybe protecting your own heart from repeated cycles of hope and disappointment is what finally gives them the motivation to either get help with their patterns or stop using your love as a place to practice emotional regulation. But how do you maintain compassion for someone's struggle while protecting yourself from the emotional damage their patterns cause? How do you support someone's growth without enabling their avoidance of commitment? These questions require wisdom that comes from understanding the difference between helping someone heal and allowing someone to use you as a safety net while they avoid doing their own emotional work. If you want to understand more about commitment fears and relationship patterns, watch my video. She says she wants a relationship, but acts like she doesn't. That video will show you exactly how commitment ambivalence shows up in daily relationship behaviors and what drives the contradiction between wanting love and pushing it away.